You hold it all day without calling it holding. 8 hours with your throat locked, jaw tight, shoulders slightly raised, like you're bracing for a question that never comes. Tongue pressed to the roof of your mouth so nothing slips out. You make it through the meeting. The small talk, the laughs. You keep your face steady because you're good at that, because someone has to be, and then you finally leave. Down the hallway. Past the last polite goodbye. Step after step, carrying your own silence like a coat you can't take off yet. Your car is waiting your shelter. You close the door, and suddenly your chest softens. The air finally moves. The tear shows up at the click of the latch. Not because you lost control, because your nervous system doesn't trust the room, it trusts the door. If you cry after you're safe, that's not weakness. That's timing. That's delayed safety. Maybe no one taught your body it was allowed to fall apart in public. Maybe you learned to be fine until you're alone. Maybe you even apologize quietly like tears are a moral failure. And honestly, in 2026, support is feeling thin. A lot of people are carrying more than they can place anywhere. This isn't a video about crying less. It's about why it arrives late and what your tears have been trying to say the moment the noise stops. Because here's the part most people miss. The body doesn't cry when it's in the middle of performing. It cries when it's no longer being watched. You get home, keys on the counter, shoes off. You set the bag down like it weighs more than it should. The kitchen light is a little too cold. The sink turns on. Water runs in that steady, ordinary way. The only sound in the house. And that's when it happens. Not in the room where you had to stay composed. Not in the moment where you had to respond quickly. But here, when everything is finally quiet enough for your system to stop negotiating, that's delayed safety. Your nervous system doesn't cry when you're in danger. It cries when you're allowed to. So if you've ever thought, why am I fine all day, and then I fall apart over nothing? It may not be nothing. It may be the first moment your body recognizes. No more eyes, no more timing, no more managing someone else's comfort. And the more important question isn't, why am I crying so much? It's asking what your nervous system learned about safety, about connection, about who is actually safe enough to see you. Because some people learned early that tears don't get held. They get judged, or ignored, or used against you. So you didn't become dramatic. You became functional. You kept the lid on to make it through the day. And when the day finally sets you down, the overflow makes sense. And once you see that, the next step is quieter than people expect. Because tears aren't one single thing. They're not one single meaning. They're not one single verdict. Picture a window on a rainy day. Condensation gathers. A drop forms. It slides down the glass. No one calls the window too sensitive. It's just physics doing what physics does. Your body is like that. There are different kinds of tears, different reasons the system releases water. First, basal tears. They're constant, quiet. They keep your eyes alive, lubricated, clear. You don't notice them because they're not meant to be noticed. Second, reflex tears. Smoke, wind, onion, a speck of dust. The body protects you before you can even think. But the third kind is the one we judge. Emotional tears. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. Some studies suggest emotional tears may carry different chemical signals, markers linked to stress, and compounds associated with relief. Even if you never memorize the biology, you already recognize the experience. Sometimes, your system releases what it couldn't release while you were still holding your posture together. Sometimes it's grief, sometimes it's tenderness. Sometimes it's the strange relief of being seen. Sometimes it's just the body finishing something it started hours ago. Not all tears mean heartbreak. Some tears mean biology. So tears aren't proof you're fragile. They're proof you're human. And if you've spent years treating every tear like a personal failure, no wonder you've been tired. Listen to the rain for a second. Let the room stay dim. Let the tissue be soft. Let the breath be long. And here's something almost no one tells you. Sometimes crying easily isn't about being too emotional. It's about being too accurate. Because you're not only reacting, you're observing. You walk into a room and you don't just hear words. You hear pressure behind the words. You hear what's being held. At a restaurant, the server sets a glass down carefully. Just a small tremor in the hand, a half-second pause that nobody at the table registers. But you do. You feel the effort it takes to stay steady, the way someone can be smiling and still bracing inside. And then later when you're alone, you wonder why your eyes sting, why something small landed so hard. Or at work, someone says, "Yeah, I'm fine." Same sentence you've heard 1,000 times. But the last word drops. Half a tone lower, a tiny softness, almost swallowed. You catch it in real time, the brief glance away, the silence between two breaths. That's the thing about people like you. Your radar picks up signals smaller than the noise. And when you notice that much, your body has to put it somewhere. This is where a concept called emotional granularity can help, not as a label, just as a light. Some people experience emotion in broad, blunt categories: good, bad, stressed, fine. Others experience it in mixed, precise weather, two truths at once. Relief braided with grief. Pride with a quiet loneliness. Warmth with a thin thread of fear. Gratitude with sadness underneath it because you know it won't last. Aw, that almost hurts. That's granularity. Not more emotion, more detail. And when emotion comes in high resolution, it doesn't always stay neatly inside language. Sometimes it becomes a physical response first. A throat tightening, eyes watering, a wave you didn't plan. You're not overreacting. You're reacting honestly. Not to the obvious headline, but to the quiet subtext everyone else scrolls past. Sometimes tears are just your body's way of filing too much data at once. A release valve for everything you noticed, and nowhere else to store. And this is where the present moment matters. Because you're not crying in a vacuum. You're crying inside a social climate. It's evening. The room is quiet. The air conditioner hums like a steady baseline. Your phone lights up your hands with that cold blue glow. You open your contacts. So many names. So many threads. Your thumb scrolls, then stops. Not because you don't know who to call, but because calling feels like asking someone to hold something you can't explain in a sentence. And you've learned over time that most people don't have the bandwidth, not because they're cruel, because they're carrying their own weight, too. You lock the screen. The room goes dim again. Sometimes the tear isn't about the moment. It's about having nowhere to put it. And honestly, that nowhere has gotten bigger lately. In a 2025 APA report, 69% of adults said they could have used more emotional support than they actually received. Not advice, not a pep talk, support. The same report points to something many people feel but rarely say out loud. A lot of adults feel less connected than they used to, and a noticeable share are having fewer social interactions than they want. So if you've been feeling thinner lately, more easily moved, more easily overwhelmed, it doesn't automatically mean you're getting worse. It may mean your life has more load, and fewer places where your nervous system can set it down. Not everyone has a room where they can be unguarded. Not everyone has a person who can hold silence without trying to fix it. So your body does what bodies do when they can't place the weight anywhere else. It releases. This is not a personal failure. It's a social climate. And if your radar is already highly tuned, like we said earlier, you won't just see that climate, you'll feel it first. And once you live in that climate long enough, you pick up a reflex, not just the tears, the apology. The hardest part isn't the crying, it's what you do after. It happens fast, almost automatic. You feel the sting behind your eyes, and before anyone can even respond, you're already saying it, "Sorry. I'm fine. It's nothing." You wave your hand like you're brushing smoke away. Not because you believe you did something wrong, but because you're trying to reduce the risk. The risk of being seen as unstable. The risk of making other people uncomfortable. The risk of becoming a lot. So you minimize. You manage the room. Even while your body is trying to release. And then you end up in the place so many quiet independents know too well. The office bathroom. Cold tile under your shoes? Fluorescent light that hums thin? Nervous making everything look tired? You turn on the faucet and let the water run too long just to have a sound that isn't your breathing. You press a tissue to your eyes. It's a little rough. Your skin feels hot, like it's been rubbed clean. And you rehearse your face, neutral, presentable, unbothered. This is what we do when we've learned that tears are unsafe. We turn tears into something shameful, something we apologize for. Now, yes. People say, "Excuse me," after a sneeze. That's politeness. You're acknowledging the noise. But you don't leave the room thinking you're a flawed person because your body sneezed. Crying is different. The apology isn't about the volume. It's about shame. It's an attempt to erase the fact that you needed something. So here's the quieter truth. You may choose politeness, but you don't owe shame. You don't owe an apology for a release. You don't have to add morality to a nervous system. You can just wash your hands. Breathe once longer than you think you're allowed to. And walk back out without punishing yourself for having a body that speaks. And if you stay with that long enough, if you stop shaming it for 5 minutes, you start to notice something else. The tears aren't only about now. Sometimes they're older than the moment that triggered them. Not in a dramatic everything is trauma way. In a simpler way, your body learned rules. It learned what happens when you show emotion. Does someone come closer or pull away? Do you get held or handled? Are you met with quiet understanding, or a lesson, or a joke, or a cold stare? And once your nervous system learns, crying isn't safe here. It adapts. It doesn't stop feeling. It just changes timing. It holds everything back. It waits until the door closes, until the cost is zero. That's learned safety. And every once in a while, something happens that feels unfamiliar. Someone looks at you, no panic, no pressure, no "what's wrong with you?" No "calm down." Just a softer voice. "It's okay." And your chest responds before your mind can organize a sentence. A small tremor, a sudden warmth behind the eyes. Your hands finally unclench on their own. Because for a lot of people, "it's okay" isn't just comfort, it's the right key in an old lock. This is why psychologists look at crying through the lens of attachment. It becomes a learned pattern, not a defect, not a personality flaw. A pattern shaped by what your system learned about closeness and safety. And that's the exhale. Learned doesn't mean broken. Learned means explainable. It means your tears make sense in the context your nervous system lived through, even if you never talk about it out loud. And there's one more layer that shapes all of this quietly and early. Not men versus women. A rule set, a kind of training. Masculine conditioning isn't only taught to boys. It's taught to anyone who gets rewarded for being hard to read and punished for being soft. You learn that steadiness earns respect. You learn that tears cost you credibility. You learn to keep your voice level, even when your insides aren't. So you become competent, capable, the one people lean on. And sometimes you become so good at fine that even you believe it until your eyes burn and you don't understand why. Picture someone standing perfectly still. Could be a man, could be a woman. The kind of person others call strong, eyes red, face unchanged, jaw locked like a clamp. They're not unfeeling. They're trained. This is what happens when the emotional switch gets taped down. The system is loaded, but the outlet has been blocked for years. Culture plays a part. Don't cry, be tough, handle it, man up. But biology can play a part too. Hormones like prolactin, which helps the body produce tears, and testosterone, which can inhibit tear production, shape your physical threshold. So sometimes the stop signal isn't only in your mind, it's in your chemistry. And when tears aren't allowed, they don't disappear. They go underground. They come out later as migraines, as back pain that won't go away, as a short fuse over something small, as numbness that feels like control, as exhaustion that never fully resets. And then when you do cry, it can feel like failure, like you broke the rule you built your identity around. If you learn to stay dry, crying now can feel like betrayal. It isn't. Sometimes it's the first honest proof that you're no longer willing to live with the switch taped down. So when your throat tightens, when your eyes heat up, when your hands clench without permission, notice the moment your fingers finally release. That release isn't weakness. It's your nervous system finally getting an outlet. And now we get to something practical, quietly practical. Not a diagnosis, not a label, just a way to read the signal. Because the real difference isn't only how often you cry, it's what happens after. There are two common after feelings. The first is regulation. You cry, and something softens. Your shoulders drop without you forcing them. Your breath gets deeper, slower. Your chest feels less armored. The room looks the same, but your mind feels a little clearer, like a window that finally stopped fogging. You might still be sad, but you feel more inside your body, not less. And later that night, you can actually sleep. That's regulation, a pressure release. The second after feeling is overload. You cry, and instead of softening, you drain. Not the good kind of empty, the hollow kind. Like your battery hit zero and your body is still buzzing. Your shoulders stay heavy. Your jaw stays tight. Your chest doesn't open, it caves inward. Your eyes hurt, but the relief never arrives. Sometimes you feel strangely flat afterward. Sometimes you feel raw and wired at the same time. Sometimes you're exhausted, but you can't rest. That doesn't mean you're weak. It can simply mean your capacity has been exceeded. Regulation feels like softening. Overload feels like draining. And if you notice a pattern crying more frequently, but relief never comes, that's not a moral verdict about your character. It's information. It may be your nervous system saying, I've been carrying too much for too long, and the release valve is opening, but the pressure source hasn't stopped. So instead of asking, what's wrong with me? A gentler question is, what is my system trying to protect me from? How long have I been holding this? Where is the support I actually need? This isn't a verdict. It's information. And if all you can do right now is notice which after feeling you live in most often, that's enough for today. So here's where we land. No big conclusion, no speech, just a quieter way to hold what you already know. Your tears aren't a problem to solve. They're a language to understand. Tears are information. Tonight, let the lights stay low. Let the house sound steady. Let the fabric of the chair catch your weight. Let your breath lengthen without performing it for anyone. You don't have to explain your weather. And if this felt like someone finally named what you've been carrying, you don't need to prove it with words. A simple signal is enough. You can leave a small mark here, a like or a short comment like I felt this, or subscribe to keep this door open for yourself. No urgency, just a door that stays open. Let it be weather, not a crime.